what you want, when you want it, where you want it. This is The Mesh.
Foot Candle Films. Film news and reviews from two guys who really like movies.
This episode is brought to you by the Foot Candle Film Society. For a schedule of upcoming screenings and membership information, visit the Society's website at www.footcandle.org.
Hello and welcome to Foot Candle Films here on the Mesh.tv podcast network. My name is Alan Jackson. With me across the table is Chris Fry. Chris, how's it going?
It's going well. I'm looking forward to discussing the film we have on the slate today.
Yeah, so we will be discussing a film. We'll have a review of a film shortly. That film will be Sasquatch Sunset, and we'll tell you all about that here in a little bit. So after that review, we've also got some news items to share. I've got two films. One kind of was a darling at the what was the big Cannes Film Festival?
Cannes Festival.
I'll kind of do a little follow-up from the Cannes. We talked about it a couple weeks ago, some of the films that were making splashes there, but I've got some updates on one in particular. And also a film that has just been announced that I think a Mr. Chris Fry will find very interesting, could be exciting, kind of relevant to, I know, something that you're involved in these days. Also a trailer to share of a film that is also one I think a Chris Fry is curious about and interested, that just came out yesterday. The trailer, the film will be coming out later this summer. So lots to talk about. And then Chris, you do have a recommendation for us this episode?
Yes.
Okay. So just for those who are new listeners, just so you know, Chris Fry likes to bring to us a recommendation of a film on a regular basis because he does get opportunities to see some great picks, and he has some to share with us and recommend for us from time to time. And today is one of those times. So we will hear from him at the end of the episode with that recommendation. But Chris, let's go ahead and get started with our main film review. It is the film Sasquatch Sunset.
The Zellner brothers, David and Nathan, with some executive producing help from one Ari Aster, he of Hereditary and Midsommar fame, have brought to the screen a look at the year in the life of a unique family. To quote a logline for the film, it captures their daily life with a level of detail and rigor that is simply unforgivable. Oh, not unforgivable, unforgettable. Sorry.
Was that a subliminal slip?
No, that was just a slip. That was not an intentional.
Okay.
Okay. And by the way, the family is a group of Sasquatches, Sasquatch. I'm not sure how you do that, but
I think it's just Sasquatch.
It's a plural.
Just Sasquatch.
So, in this film, there is no spoken dialogue. It is all grunting or just noises made by these Sasquatch. They are played by Jesse Eisenberg, Riley Keough, Christopher Zdenek, and then there's one more. Oh, yes, one of the brothers, one of the actual brothers actually plays one of the Sasquatches. Nathan Zellner he's listed as alpha male.
Yes.
So they play Jesse Eisenberg's a male, Riley Keough's a female. Then there's a child played by Christoph Zdenek, and then there's the alpha male. So you got four people. They don't talk. They just grunt and make animal noises.
And hand motions.
Yes, and hand motions and bang on trees for 88 minutes. Mm-hmm. And this film is billed as a action, adventure, comedy. So what was your experience with Sasquatch Sunset?
So Chris, come behind. We're going to take a little trip behind the scenes here, just a little bit.
Sure.
You and I do this podcast. We've done it for years now.
Yes.
We also run a film society, which we have run for years as well.
Yes.
We do this out of the kindness of our hearts because there is no financial compensation
Correct.
for doing any of
We
this.
do it because we
right
like
now.
to talk about movies.
We do.
Right.
And we care about movies.
Yes.
But the thing I'm trying to express here is that the notion of going out and reviewing films is something you and I do because we like to. Nobody's forcing us to do this.
Right.
Nobody is forcing us to watch movies and talk about them. Nobody's writing us a paycheck to do this, so that we have no obligation. If I came up today and just said, look, Chris, I think I'm done. I don't want to review films anymore. There's no implications on that. We could just stop, right?
Right.
I had a moment, just a brief moment, maybe about 15, 20 minutes into this film where I thought to myself, you know what? Maybe I don't want to review films anymore. Maybe I don't understand why I'm watching the films that I'm watching sometimes. Maybe I don't want to do this.
So this film almost single-handedly turned you off of reviewing films.
There was a moment. And then I had to
Wow.
remind myself that, no, look, Alan, just because a film does not work for you personally, that is not what film criticism is about. Film criticism is about critiquing the film for what it's meant to be and what it's meant to stand for. And if it doesn't work for me personally, that doesn't mean that there's not somebody else out there in the world that it's going to work perfectly for. So I need to understand that and recognize that. That being said, I did not like this.
Okay.
It did not work for me.
Okay.
Could I have not been in the right frame of mind for it? Could I have not been in the right setup for it? Possibly. Like I'll understand. I'll take ownership of that. I am sure that there is an audience of people that this works for them, and kudos to them. I think you summed it up pretty succinctly in your summary. I mean, that's what you described as what is on the screen. That is what people are going to get. So I found it to be more of it was an interesting exercise. I think it's something that probably would have worked better as short films, short pieces, where maybe, if you had told me that I could tune in and every week watch a 5-minute little interaction, one of these scenes with this Sasquatch family, I'm like, okay, yeah, I could do that. But putting it in this format of a film and trying to derive, in my mind, I'm not saying this is where the directors are, in my mind, trying to derive some sort of story meaning or semblance of something to take away from it. It just never got there for me for a lot of reasons. So anyway, yes, this film single-handedly almost marked the end of Foot Candle Film Festival, Foot Candle Film Society, Foot Candle Films Podcast. But it didn't. I will say that I think where I decided, no, I'm going to let this play out is the one really actually bust out laughing moment I did have in this film. And it involved the Sasquatch discovering something foreign to them in I thought a very funny editing sequence of reactions to finding this thing that I thought was generally very funny. So at that moment I said, all right, look, this is still not working for me. I still do not like this film. However, we're going to let this play out. So that's where I am with Sasquatch Sunset. It didn't work for me.
Sure.
I didn't like it, but I want to hear your thoughts though.
Well, I can't really discount, not that I would anyway, people's opinions are people's opinions, but I think I may have enjoyed watching it a little more than you. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I was let down. I admire the fact that this film even got made. And I mean, you have, Riley Keough, Jesse Eisenberg, you have two pretty well-known names. And if you didn't know they were in this film, you would know, because they are in, which is something else I admire, they are in full body costume. The entire film, like we've mentioned, they do not speak. They make noises, they grunt, they beat on things, but that's it. Mm-hmm. So they have to communicate everything through minor like eye movements and things, So that to me, in this day and age of CGI or even costumes that didn't like CGI the faces, or I admire the fact that these were full body costumes. I cannot imagine how hot they were or how bad they must have stunk after they finished this shoot, because they're big, hairy costumes. I will second the fact that even though the film's only 88 minutes, so it's, almost an hour and a half, there are ideas here. And there are little moments they have where you're like, okay, how they're working together as a unit, kind of as a family unit. There's some dynamics there. There's also kind of their isolation in the wild versus coming into contact with the modern world. There's some things there, but in general, like you say, I think it could have been boiled down to a short film or maybe a series of short films, and it probably would have worked better. I admire anybody that takes a huge swing like this, and the fact that they didn't have, they didn't really have a concrete plot with a lot of like milestones they had to hit. It was just kind of like, here we are. Maybe they could have filmed this in like a week because they didn't have,
They might have.
I don't imagine they had to like redo takes several times because it's not like an actor, said a wrong line or anything, as long as they moved how they were supposed to move.
I guarantee you Jesse Eisenberg, my guess is going to be he spent 2 days.
Could be.
Because, for a couple of reasons, but yes, that's my belief. 2 to 3 days.
And
I think the whole thing could have been done. It just made me wonder. I spent probably more time of the film wondering why cast 2 relatively known actors for this. Because other than just, I hate to think it's just from a crass standpoint of just having the names attached to the film. But I kind of expected there to be something that would make me feel like, okay, this is why you brought in some good caliber actors to do it. But no, not really. There was, I don't know. I found myself more puzzled by that decision other than, did they just need to have some names? Now, Jesse Eisenberg's listed as a producer, so I think that's probably,
so I think there's probably
might have a little bit to
something
do
there.
with that as well. But I don't
and
know.
he may just like the idea of, making an offbeat art film that's not going to have a wide audience. Like you said, I think when they showed this at Sundance, there were like tons of walkouts of this film. And I can see how it is very niche, but I can see how there's some people that probably will love this film. But I am not one of them.
Yeah.
But I think, for me, it was an interesting experiment. There were several moments I can call out. This is an early one, so it's not really it's hard to say you could really ruin things with this film. You could, there are some things that happen, but there's a grooming scene where one Sasquatch is picking, I guess, lice off the other Sasquatch, and it sneezes. And the other Sasquatch kind of wipes the back of its neck and turns around thanks. And so kind of like when you watch nature film documentaries and you see chimpanzees or you see apes, and the way we kind of put our thoughts on what they must be thinking, we kind of say, oh, they're acting human-like. So yeah, this is a fiction movie, but it was kind of interesting to see some of the interactions that they let carry over. I could see a human doing thanks for sneezing on me. That nothing was said, but just some of the, I thought that was funny. There's a similar thing where they're building a shelter, and they do this several times in the film. And one of them, they're picking up sticks and laying leaves to kind of make the shelter. And one of them has this huge armful of leaves and just kind of throws it at the shelter and continues walking. And it hits this other one in the face. And he's kind of you're not really helping. So I think it is, I mentioned they brand it as action, adventure, comedy. It is very understated as far as comedic. And so
there's stated. It is the underest of understated.
Right. And so some of the things, granted, maybe I was desperate to find something funny, but I did have little moments. There's some interactions with the modern world, which I think is what you were alluding to, which I hate to say spoil, but I don't want to, because it's the few moments that are there, I don't want to remember. But those interactions to me were funny. But not enough to carry an entire film. I, would have liked for it to be boiled down. I will say too, which I was not expecting, it has kind of the film overall, and definitely at the end, has a very kind of somber tone. And things don't really go well for this group of Sasquatch.
Right.
So if you're saying, the Zellner's you know what, we want to do a fiction film, narrative film, but we want to kind of tell an environmental kind of cautionary tale, or somehow they were trying to think how could we take an interesting approach to this and kind of show, because I feel a lot of I think this was shot out in California, and a lot of the vistas of the forests and the mountains were beautiful, but you do get a lot of them because that's where these guys live, or guys and girls live. But it's like an interesting take on trying to make a statement movie, but from a very bizarre angle. Did it entirely work for me? No. But if their statement is looking at endangered species who's slowly getting wiped out, like, there again.
If that was an intent, it was, again, just like everything else, so understated and so hard to pick up on. So, again, I'm not faulting it from me. I don't believe films always have to have a point or a message or whatever. I'm fine with experiential films that just kind of put you in the world of the characters. And, this film traipses on that, but I still also just didn't feel like I really ever understood
why they made
these
it,
group or anything. I mean, I don't understand even I hate, it sounds so weird to say I didn't understand the characters, but I mean, if we're spending an hour and a half with them, I still don't really feel like I got a sense of truly anything about them. As soon as I felt like I had a handle on who they wanted us to believe these characters were, then something would change. I'm like, oh, okay, well, obviously that I was wrong on that. So I don't know these people at all, or I don't know these creatures at all. Again, if the point of the film is just to say, we just want to have a weird experimental film, let's just dress up 4 people as Sasquatch. And since Sasquatch are make-believe animals, we can have them have any personality or any type of function we want to. And how would they be? They're half caveman, but yet they've kind of got a little bit of human traits. I mean, it's a weird blend of
little bit,
of that. It's like, all right, let's just do an hour and a half of them, their world, almost like a nature documentary we're just filming.
Right.
Kind of get that, but then the film does take some detours into like little bits and little things that are not really, like, if you want to make it like a true nature documentary, but it just happens to be fake people, Sasquatch. That's one thing. This though tries to do something different with it from time to time, but then it's not confident enough to go further with where it kind of wants to lead you at times. So yeah, it was, I'm not going to call it a disappointment for me because I didn't really have any expectations going into it. So it's hard to disappoint me on this.
Sure.
I kind of had a feeling seeing even the trailer and reading about this that I felt like I knew how I was going to feel about it early on. And but yeah, it was just not a good experience for me.
And I think,
but I do want to say, just like you said, I don't want that to be a indictment to say that people should not try to make films like this, because I think we need more films like this. It's just this particular one, the way it was made, the subject matter, the style, everything just didn't work.
Sure.
So.
Well, and I think it may have worked a little bit better for me, but still not entirely successful. Totally hear everything you're saying. The Zoner brothers are unique filmmakers. This is the 3rd film that I've seen by them. Kamiko the Treasure Hunter, I think, was the first film I ever saw by them, and that's all the way back in 2014. Then they made a film called Damsel, which was 2018. I think has Robert Pattinson in it.
Yes.
And it's a very interesting Western. That one, I would say...
Is it Mia Wasikowski's
in it
as
so.
well?
Yeah. Wasikowska, yeah. I think of the 3 films that I've seen from them, that was probably the most successful. But I admire them that when they set out to make films, they're not like, okay, they're obviously independent filmmakers who come up with their ideas, and, bravo for being able to get these films made. But, I wouldn't call any of them commercial successes.
So
obviously.
I haven't seen either of those other films. Anything at all similar? I mean, anything you picked up from that was a kind of a style thing for them, or an approach, or are they truly very, very different films, all 3?
They're all pretty different because obviously Damsel's a Western and Kamiko is just kind of this. I would say Kamiko kind of is similar to Sasquatch Sunset in that it doesn't really have a strong plot element and it kind of meanders around and there's not a lot of dialogue happening. So it's similar in that way, but all, interesting. Damsel would be their most normal because it's like a Western with a guy setting out to, I believe, go rescue his girlfriend or fiance. I can't remember. It's been a long time since I've seen it. It was 2018. So, but I think the style, like, you can tell they have the mark of, this is somebody's independent film. They wrote those films. Like, So not that it carries a lot over, and like humor in the films. I don't remember there being any in Kamiko, but Damsel, yeah, pretty understated. So,
Okay.
but yeah, so be that for what it may be. So,
Right. Here's what I would say to anybody. I mean, the trailers are out there. If you're curious about
Right.
this film, watch the trailer. If that trailer just completely enraptures you and you say, yes, I want to see 88 minutes of exactly this, knock yourself out. You're ready to go. If you watch it and you say, you know what, this doesn't look like for me, you're right. It is not for you, and
Right.
you need to kind of move on. So, yeah, an interesting experiment film with a few moments that I did like a moment here or there, but in general, yeah, just not a good experience film for me. And I think it's going to be a tough sell. I mean, look, they knew this was going to be a tough sell.
Right.
It's not like they made this thinking it was going to be a commercial hit.
and why they have Jesse Eisenberg and Riley Keough, I think you nailed it. It's because, at least with Star's name attached, people
At least
might
they can
be
get a
more
couple actors
curious.
out there to do some, a Q&A interview, media spots to try to help promote it. But,
Right.
yeah. Not my film. You know what? I think did I say the same thing about what was the film we reviewed last week? I think or 2 weeks ago, I actually said the same thing. Just not my film. Oh, Furiosa.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Look, Furiosa is a better film. I think, better made, better production, everything else. But it's just another example of it. It's just a film that's just not for me. But there's an audience out there for it. Furiosa has a much bigger audience than this will, but
Sure.
still kind of falls in the same camp.
Yeah. Agreed.
All right. Anything else you have to say about Sasquatch Sunset, or are you?
No, and I
We're
think
pretty good on that.
If I can summarize what I was feeling as far as disappointment,
Yeah.
because of I felt like there was going to be a level of quirk, kind of similar to the Daniels films, Swiss Army Man. Basically, I was thinking this is going to be kind of like a Swiss Army Man, like kind of odd, off kilter, very quirky film. They also did Everything Everywhere All at Once, which I knew it wasn't going to be like that because it's like, a lot of dialogue and stuff. But I thought I was in for that type of ride. And instead, it was so understated that I was like, oh man, I want a little more for it. So, but yeah, so overall, a letdown. But I'm glad films like this still get made. Just not as successful as I would have liked for me.
True. Okay. Good deal. Well, that is Sasquatch Sunset. It is probably not playing in a theater near you, but it is available online for rental and all that.
Right.
I mean, it is playing in a few select theaters, I'm assuming, but very select. I would imagine very, very, very select.
Sure.
All right, Chris. Well, let's take a quick break, and when we come back, I've got a couple of news items and a trailer to share, and we'll wrap up with Chris's film recommendation for the week. Stay tuned. You're listening to Foot Candle Films here on themesh.tv.
This podcast is sponsored by Jackson Creative, a custom communication agency located in downtown Hickory, North Carolina, specializing in online content creation. To learn more, visit thejacksoncreative.com. Jackson Creative, we tell your story.
Hello, welcome back to Foot Candle Films here on themesh.tv. Alan Jackson, Chris Fry with you. We just had our review of the film Sasquatch Sunset, which we were both not big fans of. Chris got a little bit more out of it than I did.
Little bit.
But we're still, even off mic during the break, we were kind of just complaining about the film a little bit. Anyway, but again, please, directors, filmmakers, producers, don't stop making these interesting experimental films on our behalf. Just this one just didn't work. Okay. That's all it was. Just didn't work. So, all right, Chris, I did want to share a couple of news items I found of interest. Let me start off with one as a follow-up to our discussion about the Cannes Film Festival a couple weeks ago, maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. We discussed some of I gave you the standing ovation meter. I told you the films that were having the longest standing ovation, which I still think is the dumbest mark of trying to determine how successful a film is at this particular film festival, but it is what they're using. But let me wrap up the festival with kind of one more interesting note, and that was the actual film that won the Palme d'Or award, which is their highest award for the Cannes Film Festival. Whenever every year they do this, because it's not a film that you and I talked about during the last conversation. This is one that actually I think premiered after I had recorded with you, so it was not one that we had any feedback on. But the film that won the Palme d'Or is a film called Anora. And it is by director Sean Baker.
Sure.
So you know Sean Baker, we have discussed some of his work on this show before. He started out with the film Tangerine, which was kind of got a little bit of a reputation for all being shot on iPhones and being very low budget, but also got a lot of acclaim at the time. Then he followed that up with The Florida Project, which we actually hosted a screening of and we reviewed on the show. I'm big fan of The Florida Project. I like that film quite a bit. He did a third film, Red Rocket. I never saw. I'm guessing you saw it.
I did see it. Yeah.
It was
okay. Not as Florida Project for me was my favorite of the three.
Okay. So, but this is his fourth film, and it did win the big award at the Cannes Film Festival. It is it's described by Variety as it's Sean Baker's comic look at an exotic dancer and sex worker who marries the son of a Russian oligarch. And it's coming to theaters this fall. It'll open in limited release October 18th. It got picked up by Neon Pictures as the studio is going to release it.
So it sounds like a combination between Tangerine, which dealt with sex workers, and Red Rocket, which was an adult film star, but it was a comedic look on kind of how he was a loser. So it sounds like it's kind of meshing those two, and then some commentary with an oligarch, a Russian oligarch.
Right. So the review that Variety gave of the film, Peter DeBrudge, the reviewer, he is quoted as saying that the film was the, quote, uncut gem of this year's Cannes competition, adding that it was a rowdy, Safdie-style movie about two cultures, Russian and American, two languages, Russian and English, and two currencies, money and sex. So that was the film. Again, won the big award. It stars Mikey Madison, which may not recognize the name.
I don't.
She was in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. She played one of the three
Manson people?
Yes.
Okay.
That kind of instigated the attack at the end.
Okay.
So if you remember, you had who's the gentleman that is also popular now?
Austin Butler.
Austin Butler was one of the three. She was one of the females that was in that group, in that film. So, and then Mark Idelson, who we don't know, I think is a fairly new actor. He plays the drug-addled son of privilege, and who's drawing a lot of comparisons performance-wise to Timothée Chalamet. So, this is the film. It won the big award. It is being released by Neon. The Variety article kind of details a little bit something I thought was interesting. So Neon, I know we love RA24, but Neon I think is kind of like the next one down. It's it's still, Neon did Parasite.
Yes.
They released it in October a few years ago. They released Triangle of Sadness last year in October, which got Oscar nominations. Anatomy of a Fall they released in October, and now they're releasing Anora this coming October. So they're positioning it as their big film for
I'm a fan of A24. We don't give as much, I guess, lip service to Neon, but those two, pretty much any film they do, I'm usually interested to see what they are, because they make films all over the map. So
interestingly enough, Anora was the first United States film, like produced in the United States, to earn the Palme d'Or since 2011's Tree of Life from Terrence Malick.
Okay.
Which I hadn't even thought about that, but that's very interesting. So Sean Baker winning the big award for his next film. So I am honestly very, very anxious to see it. Can't wait to see it and see how it turned out. So, and I'm sure we'll be discussing it here on this show as well.
Probably.
When we do. All right, so that was first article. Second story I want to bring up, kind of interesting. I don't know if this was in the air when you and I had this conversation the other night, but my understanding is that you are knee deep in the television show Peaky Blinders.
Yes.
Okay. So were you aware when you decided to embark on that viewing experience of watching that show that there's now going to be a film?
I was vaguely aware. My son, which is the whole reason I'm watching it, because he was a big fan of it. I asked him, I was like, so it's done 6 seasons? He's like, well, there's rumors of a movie. So I'm like, okay. So they are going to.
The rumors are now official.
Okay.
There is going to be a Peaky Blinders film
Okay.
at Netflix. So Netflix is doing it.
Okay. Which makes sense. That's where I'm watching the show. So,
Yeah.
okay.
And it will have, of course, Cillian Murphy will be starring in it, or Cillian Murphy, and also producing it. So he is still attached to it. Thomas Shelby is back, is what the Variety article is saying. It will still be directed by Tom Harper, who directed some of the episodes of the first season of the show.
Okay.
He's basically Cillian Murphy quoted as saying this is one for the fans. So they are kind of doing this as a fan recognition kind of film, capping off the series.
So I'm interested to see. I am only 2 or 3 episodes into the second season. I like the show. Cillian Murphy is obviously one of the big names. Sam Neill is also in it. And then others I don't really recognize, but those 2 names are like some of the big names, at least so far in the series. I don't recognize, they may bring on people that I'll recognize later. But I like it. But I feel like, kind of like how Succession, they did 3 seasons or 4 seasons?
I think 4 seasons.
Okay. But by the time they ended, it was like, yeah, that
was the ending.
That's it, And like, I could see like, why make a movie? Because it's like, no, I'd be curious what they feel like there was left to do after 6 seasons. Because even though I'm only in the second season, I could see how this would only be 3 or 4, because it just seems like the material, the content. But who knows? And it's interesting that you say Murphy's been quoted as like, oh, this is one for the fan. Like, they're just going to give them just a little bit more. So, because it's basically gang warfare in England or London. So that's kind of the deal.
Well, I'm speaking completely out of turn here, because even though my wife watched the series, I heard it playing in my house for several weeks on end while she binged it at one point. I didn't see it, so I don't know. I don't know how the series ended. I don't know if a film makes sense with it. I don't know. I have no recollection. I really just brought this article up for you. That's it. I have nothing invested in the Peaky Blinder universe.
Well, and it's also interesting to me. This is Oscar winner Cillian Murphy. So he's done. He for the longest time he was in some of the Batman films. He was kind of like that guy. He didn't really have a starring role. That was like put him up on a pedestal, and it was like him. Peaky Blinders was one of the first things where it's like, yeah, he's the central character of Thomas Shelby. But then, Oppenheimer, and it's like, okay, he's in the big time. So now it's interesting to me also that, yeah, this is like a project that he wants to do. So I don't know. Interesting.
Yeah, I think so too. So I think the date on that, did I tell you a date? Did I mention the date on this?
I don't believe so.
Let's see.
So they've already started shooting it, or in production?
They're saying the film goes into production later this year. It'll be made in association with BBC Film. Okay. So yeah, it'll still be a little while.
Gotcha.
So we're at least a year out from this. But interesting still to see coming to Netflix a Peaky Blinders film. Okay. All right, Chris, another story. Yeah, this is all just custom made for you at this point.
Awesome.
There is a trailer to watch. Just came out yesterday. We have talked about this film briefly. I don't think we really dug into it very deep, but I know you are a fan of the Alien franchise.
Yes.
More specifically, you are a fan of the Ridley Scott Alien stuff.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
I mean, just as recap for everybody who maybe isn't as familiar with the franchise. Ridley Scott directed the original. I think it was like 79, something like that.
Yeah.
And it was the original film was definitely more sci-fi horror.
Yes.
Was kind of the genre.
Yes.
Then James Cameron came and did a sequel in the mid 80s, I believe, called Aliens.
Right.
And it was science fiction, but had more action thriller format to it.
Which
but
I like that one.
No, I did too. It was a good movie. David Fincher famously got his start directing feature films with Alien 3, which was not as successful. Took a different approach to the series a little bit. Still had Sigourney Weaver, but a lot of people were very disappointed with that film. I think it's built back some fans over time just because it's Fincher.
Right.
It was kind of seeing his early style in filmmaking. After that,
Alien Resurrection, which was
that's right. And that had Sigourney Weaver as well.
yeah, and Winona
Ryder.
Yeah.
I remember seeing that. I actually saw that.
and that was an odd movie.
I actually saw that overseas. I think I saw that in England.
Okay.
During my honeymoon. That would have been like late 90s. It would have come out, maybe 97, I think, if I'm remembering correctly.
That would have been a rather odd film to see on a honeymoon.
It was.
For sure.
It was. Yeah, and not a great film. I don't seem to recall that. Anyway, and then I think there was a lot of time off. The whole alien thing they did, the Alien Predators, which doesn't really count. That's different.
I do not count those.
Yeah, we don't count those. So it didn't really start back up until Ridley Scott got a hold of it again and did Prometheus, which I know you are a big fan of.
I'm a huge fan of that film.
Then it was a follow-up with Alien. What was the next film? The one that...
Covenant.
Alien Covenant, which tried to bring it back a little closer to the Alien that, people liked,
Right.
Because Prometheus did go in some different directions
And
explored more the mythology
Yes.
of the whole thing as opposed to just being an alien movie.
Right.
So,
And I think, this is probably heresy to most people who enjoy the franchise. Prometheus is probably my favorite.
okay. All right. Interesting.
I like a lot of the other ones. Obviously, there would be no Prometheus if there hadn't been the 1979 Alien. And Cameron's, action sense from that one, the second one, good. But Prometheus is my favorite. And I was disappointed because I felt like after Prometheus, he got a lot of pressure to go and make more of a
Make it a more
horror
alien movie.
slasher like thing. Mm-hmm. And so then he made, make it an alien movie. And so he made Covenant, and I was disappointed. And then now he's executive producing this new one.
He is producing it. So all that to say, yes, we're now come to here to where the next official movie in the Alien franchise is set. And it is coming out August 16th. So we're about 2 months away. It is Alien Romulus.
And I had heard that I had thought, at least, I'm glad to be wrong, that originally it was just going to be released on, I guess, Hulu, kind of like they did Predator or Prey.
Right.
They did Prey. But now I'm seeing that no, it's going to have a theatrical release and then it'll end up online. So I'm kind of excited that I'm going to get to see an alien movie in the
theater. Yeah. So August 16th, theatrical release. That is true. It's 20th Century Studios. Directed by, you've already mentioned, but Fede Alvarez, who he did the latest versions of the Evil Dead movies.
Right.
Is more of a horror film director known as. Supposedly this film is to take place between Ridley Scott's original Alien and James Cameron's Aliens.
Which in my head, I already think I know. I think I know how that's possible. So hopefully,
yeah, we'll see.
Good, yeah.
Kaylee Spaney, she who played Priscilla Presley in Priscilla, the film last year.
And she played one of the journalists in Civil War.
That's right, she did. Yes, the younger startup journalist.
Right.
She's going to be the star of this film. The plot has been kept mysterious, so we're going to kind of honor that and kind of keep that as well. But it did release a trailer. And Chris, I'm going to show you the trailer.
I have not seen it yet. Okay. I had seen it come out, but I haven't watched it yet. So
we're going to watch it.
Excited.
And I'd like to hear your thoughts on this. So here we are. I'll go ahead and tell you, for those of you, obviously, that are listening on audio, which is everybody, because that's how we put this out. You're just going to hear a lot of noises and screams. And I was about to say,
surely we're going to hear a lot of screams.
Yeah, so just be warned. It's going to be a couple minutes of a lot of just noise. And but we'll be back as soon as this is over. Here we go. The trailer for Alien Romulus.
Is this really where you want to spend the rest of your life?
You know I don't.
Then this is our only ticket out of here.
All right. So that was the trailer for Alien Romulus. Chris, I know you and I are very, at least me personally, I'm very jaded. I'm very torn on the state of trailers these days. I don't like trailers that give away too much.
Sure.
I feel like this trailer probably was okay in that I don't feel like I really have a sense for plot or story. It's just more mood and style. And it definitely seemed to be going more horror
Oh yeah.
Definitely more in the vein of the first movie than others. So your thoughts on what you saw here?
I think it looks good. It looks like an alien movie. It looks like an alien movie. I liked I liked one of the audio cues they did that you probably heard in the trailer. It's like this little clicking noise, which was introduced in James Cameron actually introduced that in Aliens. And that's kind of these motion sensors on their guns usually that would tell them when like things were coming near them. And so I liked that little kind of reference, but as the trailer wore on, I got a little concerned because there were a lot of scenes that seemed to be directly cut from Aliens, the James Cameron. There's a scene with a female, I think it's Kaylee Spaney, up against a wall, and the alien's like coming right at her face, and she's kind of like pinned there. And that's like Ripley's had that. Like,
I mean, honestly, I think that actually, that was Alien 3. I didn't think there was a version of it in Alien 4. I mean,
it's kind of like a Hallmark thing. Which, granted, if you have aliens running around at some point, they're probably going to pin somebody against a wall and hiss at them. So, but just to choose that to put in the trailer, I was like, okay. I think it is an interesting. I could see how this could be really good because they're taking a time period that's a limited time period. We already know the first film, we know what happens in James Cameron Aliens, and they're taking this very narrow window and say, like, what happened on this planet to get us from A to B?
Yeah.
I would also admire it if in this film nobody lives, because that would make a lot of sense. So it's kind of like a Solo type aspect that they do with Rogue One. It's kind of like a Rogue One idea, giving you some backstory, but yet like there are going to be no other sequels. This is an idea for a film. We're going to make this film, but then it's a one and done.
Yeah.
But because it's such a part of a massive franchise, I doubt that they'll probably make it somehow so there can be another spinoff if this is successful.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I'm just such a sucker for alien movies. I'll go see it. But I'm not expecting greatness.
Yeah, I was going to say, go in with low expectations here. Okay. Go in with low expectations. We'll see what comes out of this. But, I'm interested. I feel for you because I know you like the Prometheus and you like kind of what they were building and starting from that. And I think you liked kind of the direction that it was taking with that film starting the way. And then they did kind of do a quote course correction for fan response to kind of get it back to this. And obviously this is now bringing it all the way back. It's like, nope, we are back to the original two films in style and tone. So we'll see. I'll be curious to see how this is going to turn out. But that is August 16th coming out in theaters. But it sounds like they are planning a relatively quick online
Is it Hulu who's responsible for it as well?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. Speaking of, I didn't actually have this as a news item to share, but just because you brought it up and it does seem kind of timely, they also just announced, in the same kind of theme that we're in, a new Predator film.
Oh.
That is also going to be directed by Trachtenberg. Dan Trachtenberg,
who did Prey.
Who did Prey, which I liked a lot.
I did too.
And it's going to be in that same kind of style universe. So it is a Predator movie by Dan Trachtenberg that's a little bit more like a standalone, kind of like Prey was, where it's just kind of its own story in there. And it's going to star Elle Fanning. The film is titled Badlands. It's basically said that Dan Trachtenberg is going to be expanding on its Predator universe. His next standalone picture, Badland, looks to be gaining momentum with Elle Fanning now signing on to star. Trachtenberg co-wrote the script. Anyway, plot details are under wraps, but it's still going to involve the Predator. But it sounds like it's going to be another film that's like can just exist on its own, which is how Prey did, which I liked.
Which that was like a Native American slant, and so maybe this is going to be like it sounds like a Western.
Where Predator shows up. So I'm cool with this. I like that kind of this idea. It's like, all right, just pick a time period, pick a place in the world, and let's have the Predator show up. And how do the people of that time deal with it? So could be interesting. But anyway, sounds like he is kind of digging in deep into that universe and going to keep doing some work there. So, which I thought was interesting, though. Tell me, Chris, am I right with this? I'm sorry. I'm going to show you something, a photograph.
Okay.
And obviously people listening aren't going to be able to see what I'm talking about, but there's a photograph that's attached to this article I just mentioned about the Predator film.
So it's still from the production?
No, just a still in general, but
Okay.
that is the Predator? Doesn't, I mean, kind of looks like the Predator, but it looks like a alien
It
Predator
looks like a
blend.
mashup of an alien. Yeah, it does.
I wonder if they pulled a still image from like one of those Alien Predator films
Maybe.
or something by accident. And anyway, it confused me
Yeah.
because I saw that and I'm like, that's an alien. Oh, wait a minute. No, it's maybe
a
it's a Predator. I don't know what it is. Anyway, Deadline, fix your image there. I don't know what that image is.
I wouldn't think they would blend those two franchises because I think in general people didn't care for them. So I would be surprised if they were trying to blend them back together.
No, I don't think that's. I really think this Badlands movie is going to be like you described. It's basically just Predator shows up somewhere else in history, and how did the people of that time deal with it? So, okay. All right. That is all I've got, Chris. That's all the news. That's all the trailers to share. But we do want to end the show like we try to, not every week, but try to on the most point, with a Chris Fry patented recommendation of a film that he thinks we ought to check out. Again, the way this works is Chris recommends a film. I add it to my watch list. I never get to it in my watch list. And that's that. So, but we'll see. I still like to kind of keep building the list of things to try to check out. So, Chris, what do you have to recommend for us today?
So this is a film that I actually ended up watching. It's on Hulu. It's called The Contestant. And I ended up watching it because my wife had heard a This American Life story on NPR about it. And she kept saying, I want to watch this documentary. It's on Hulu. And I was like, okay. So back before Survivor, before Big Brother, and most importantly, before The Truman Show, there was a gentleman who went on a game show. And it is incredible. So The Contestant, the little tagline is the naked truth about the world's first reality star. So, and then goes further in description, the incredible true story of a man who lived for 15 months trapped inside a small room, naked, starving, and alone, and completely unaware his life was being broadcast on national TV in Japan to over 15 million viewers a week. Okay. Now, let me preface this with saying, just like Sasquatch Sunset, I think, we said like not for everyone, kind of wasn't for Alan and I, but we could see some people really liked it. This documentary, which I think I reacted to it more than my wife. I mean, she was glad we watched it, but this was a tough sit for me because the emotional strain that this gentleman goes under is pretty intense. I mean, 15 months, you heard it. And I won't spoil anything about the show because you cannot believe that this is true. And I'll get a quote here too from another movie critic, Matt Singer. He wrote on Letterboxd, "This is as much a documentary as it is video evidence that should have been presented at someone's trial."
Wow.
It's a tough set. But it is fascinating to think about how this came way back when, before Truman Show, before all this reality stuff, and just
This actually 1998 is when
Yes.
this quote show
I believe
was taking
this
place.
yeah. Yeah. And it, like I said, it got to be really popular. And I don't really want to reveal a lot of details because it's kind of surprising, but it's a little bit of a tough sit. You feel bad for the gentleman. But it's called The Contestant. It's streaming on Hulu. And they do have some modern day interviews, but a lot of it is footage from back then of the show. And people commenting on the footage and like news commentators commenting on the footage and stuff. It is the first film from director Claire Titley. This is her first documentary. Okay. She's probably made short films, but this is her first feature. And I found it pretty impressive. But like I say, it is kind of a tough sit. But if you enjoy documentaries, if you like documentaries, and if you've ever been, I guess, fascinated, which I know you do, follow Survivor.
I do.
I'd be curious what your read is on this.
I have my one reality show I've watched just because it's a tradition. My wife and I started watching about the time we got married, and Survivor, and so we still watch that kind of religiously. But I can't stomach any other reality show. I can't watch anything else. I'm fascinated by the concept of reality shows and the production of reality shows, but I choose not to watch them myself other than that one. So I'm intrigued now with this. Fred Armisen's the narrator.
Okay, so yes, let me.
I'm just
so
curious.
a lot of the film, because it's Japanese, a lot of it's subtitled.
Okay,
a lot of the film subtitled. However, at some points they show parts of the show. And they change it to English, and they have Fred Armisen kind of acting like a game show host,
Okay.
so that you can kind of get an idea of how the audiences were perceiving it. And sometimes they change the text on screen so it's English instead of Japanese.
I gotcha.
But there's and it's just really interesting. And I kept thinking I'm still thinking about it. So, but yeah, I'll give a little warning. But I thought it was interesting. That's The Contestant, and it is streaming on Hulu. And it's a 2023 film, so it's pretty new.
All right. Well, I'm about to take a family vacation coming up this weekend. I know, and I'm so tempted to want to watch this now. So I'm just trying to gauge whether this is something we watch as a family.
Well, I mean,
unit.
they may find it fascinating, and your family's your children are old enough now that they could definitely handle it. So,
yeah.
But,
My youngest now is 18, so we're good.
Yeah.
So. All right.
Yeah.
I may be checking that out. So, all right. That is The Contestant. You said it is on Hulu.
Yes.
Documentary, 90 minutes, directed by Claire Titley, and you are recommending it with a cautionary warning.
Right.
So, okay. Yeah. Good deal. Thank you, Chris. And thank you to everybody for listening to this episode of Foot Candle Films. Chris, if anybody would like to follow up with us, engage in any dialogue, maybe they experienced Sasquatch Sunset and just had a revolutionary experience with it.
Maybe it's their favorite film of 2024.
It's changed their life and they want to talk to us about it. By all means, we'd love to hear from you. How can people talk with us about any of this?
You can send an email to info@footcandle.org. You can follow us on Twitter @FootCandleFilm, Facebook, we're Foot Candle Film Society, Instagram and Threads, we're on there just simply as Foot Candle Film. Al and I are also on Letterboxd, where we try to track what we're seeing and leave quick takes. Do us a favor. If you like the show, consider giving us a star rating or writing a review, because that helps us reach new listeners. Share it with friends, because, the more listeners, that's good for us. The 2024 Foot Candle Film Festival. It'll be held in Hickory, North Carolina, September 20th through the 28th. We're excited because it's going to be our 10th festival. And we're in kind of the final stages of coming up with our lineup, so we'll be announcing that soon. But we hope you can join us if you're in Western North Carolina.
All right. That's what we've got going on. That's what's coming up. And we hope to hear from you guys soon. Thanks so much for listening. And we will be back next time with more film reviews, discussions, and recommendations. Thanks and take care.
See you in the ticket line.
Watch films in the company of like-minded people in the dark. Watch films in the underground. We won't let anyone know where you are. The films that don't make it to Carmike at the mall, or ones that were famous when Grandpa would watch films out of the reverence of the heritage of an art. Watch films through the courtesy of Foot Candle Film Society.
Special thanks to Carpal Tuller for the show theme music. For more about Carpal Tuller, visit www.carpaltuller.com. You've been listening to The Mesh, an online media network of shows and programs ranging from business to arts, sports to entertainment, music to community. All programs are available on the website as well as through iTunes and YouTube. Check us out online at themesh.tv. Discover other network shows and give us feedback on what you just heard.